Coming up on the Carter Cadence.
What excites you the most about this job?
Gosh, I think the kids, I think seeing how hard these kids work. I think seeing, their commitment to being a Bulldog and putting that red C on and just the enthusiasm for football in this community.
Hello and welcome back to the Carter Cadence. I'm your host, Brooks Carter. Welcome into another edition of the show, episode number 11, as we have really been able to get this thing off the ground and running. Thank you so much to those who have been tuning in throughout the first 10 and now 11 episodes. It's been greatly appreciated as this has been a fun project for me thus far. Coming up on today's show, we will have new Cedartown head coach Tommy Atha, who is a name that's been known around the area for quite a while. After spending 20 years as the head football coach at Darlington, he retired in 2021 and took a year or two off, came back as the offensive coordinator at Calhoun last year, won a state title, and I guess the itch was there to continue on and come back and be a head coach, and now he gets to do it at one of the all-time great programs in Northwest Georgia at Cedartown. So we'll talk to him all about that coming up in today's Coaches Conversation. Coming up on today's NWGA Throwback segment, we will take a look back at one of my all-time favorite throwback games. In fact, I've had this game on my YouTube channel prior to ever even starting this show. It is the 1991 Dalton-Murray County game, and it is one of the all-time comebacks in Northwest Georgia football history, maybe even Georgia high school football history, as Murray was able to erase a 3-touchdown lead in the final 3 minutes of the game. We'll go through, break it down, and go through the entire comeback in today's NWGA Throwback segment. As always, you can follow the show by searching Brooks Carter Media. That is the handle on YouTube, or you can search the show name, The Carter Cadence, and you can find it that way on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, available on those three major platforms for you to consume the show. Follow on social media. I'm at Brooks Carter Media on Instagram and TikTok, at Brooks A. Carter on X, and then you can follow NWGA Football on social media. That is just NWGA Football. Just type it out on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So that sets the show up. Let's go ahead and get into it. Here is today's Player Spotlight. So this week's Player Spotlight is a name that is well known in this area. He's probably the top player from our area. I think he may be a 5-star at this point. Kaiden Prothro, the tight end, receiver, whatever you want to call him, out of Bowdon, has won 3 state championships in a row, trying to make it 4. Here he is, little tunnel screen, takes it to the house, and you'll see a lot of that here. He is 6'6", over 200 pounds, has great top-end speed considering his size. He's got power. He's got moves in the open field like you see there. I mean, just an unbelievable football player. Here he is. They got him split out wide at wide receiver in a 5-wide formation, throws it over the top of the defense there, gets past the DB for a long touchdown. Watch this one here. Just throw it up to the man, let him make a play. That's all you got to do. He reminds me of the guy that just got drafted out of Arizona, who is going to the Carolina Panthers. I can't remember his name, but similar body stature. But Caiden's actually a little taller than that guy too. It's this the Polynesian guy from Arizona. But they get him involved in a number of ways in the pass game. They've got the screen game that they get him involved in because he's really hard to tackle in space with that big body, deceptive speed with those long strides, just over the top here, goes up in traffic, makes a catch over a man. I don't know what you're supposed to do if you're a DB. The DB had that one covered about as well as you can. Look at him getting involved in the blocking game now. Just throws that guy down like a rag doll. And then red zone, it's over with this guy. Back-to-back plays here in the red zone. I mean, he's I don't even know what you're supposed to do in the red zone against this guy. He's so big. He's got great athletic ability. So, I mean, it's at 6'6", it's already hard to guard him. But then you add in the fact that he is fast. He can jump well. He's an incredible basketball player, too. And you can see kind of that basketball-esque. You know, there's a lot of former great basketball players who have turned into great tight ends. Because of their ability to rebound and using that kind of skill set from basketball on the football field. You see him on defense here. He's made back-to-back interceptions. This is something a lot of people don't really know about his game, is the defensive aspect of him playing. He only had about half his junior season of highlights on huddles, so threw in some of his sophomore highlights as well. As a sophomore, was listed at 6'6", 207. He's even larger than that now as a junior, now going into his senior year. I mean, he's getting recruited by all the big boys. Quick slant there over the middle, run away from everybody. That's against the Temple Tigers, little inter-Carroll County rivalry. Temple tries to go a squib kick here, and they don't do a great job covering it. And Kaiden Prothro just takes it right up the seam there for a touchdown. That's a kick return. You don't see that often, a squib kick returned for a score. Deep post route here. Just throw it over. Don't throw it over his head. Just throw it right at him when he's that open. Here he is for what was their second of 3 straight state championships. Catches it off a tipped ball and gets in for a touchdown down at the Dome. I believe this is against Heard County. And I mean, look, I mean, that's basically in the double coverage here against the Central Lions. And I mean, Central's won back-to-back region titles. This is a good football team who is several classifications above Bowdon that he's doing that to. And it really hasn't mattered who's been the starting quarterback either. Bowdon's had a different starting quarterback each of the last 2 seasons. They'll have a different one again this year. They know the drill. They're smart. Just get him the football. Throw it up to him. Let him do his thing. Nice pass over the middle. Catches it in traffic. Drags the guy in for a touchdown. He is going to be, I mean, he's already been exceptional, but he is going to be just off the charts this year. I'm excited to see how Bowdon gets him, what their plans are to get him the football. Good job of his awareness on the field there to get both feet in bounds. That's a great play call right there. They faked like they were going to have the QB run, kind of pulled up on a play action and just dumped it off over the top to Kaiden. And his name is awesome too to me. As a guy who's an Alabama grad, the only other name that we know in football from Prothro is Tyrone Prothro, who is one of the all-time Alabama greats whose career ended abruptly on a pretty sad situation against the Florida Gators back in '05. But Prothro is a great football name. I mean, if he lives up to anything like that, and Alabama's a team who's on his radar. You know, he's not, I think he's maybe announced who some of his finalists are. This against Dade County here. Now you're going to get to really see him have a chance to play some defense here for a couple of plays. I'll be curious to see how specialized he is, especially in his senior year, how much defense they have him playing. Because there was way more defensive tape as a sophomore. There was a lot less as a junior. So it appeared maybe they specialized him a little more to the offensive side of the ball as a junior. I'm curious to see how much that happens. This is against Heard County again here. Back against Dade County. Now he was blocking out on the top of the screen there, threw a guy to the ground. Back here, out at receiver, little RPO over the middle. Catches it for a score. Once again, down in the red zone, just throw it over the top to him, let him go do his thing. I mean, I believe undoubtedly, I'm saying this without seeing every other player in the state, I think he's the best red zone target of any player in the state of Georgia, and probably one of the best in the entire country from a high school football standpoint. He's going to be an immediate impact player because of that for whoever he signs for at the collegiate level. That is Kaiden Prothro, the number one ranked player in our area from our top 100 small school players we put out. I don't think it matters what classification. I think he would probably be at least top 3 in our area of rising seniors this year going into the 2025 season. All eyes on him this year. I think a lot of people expect him to have a big year as Bowdon's trying to put together a historic four-peat. Not very many programs have ever done that, and he's a big part of what they've been able to do the last few years and will be going into his senior season. So that's this week's Player Spotlight. Kaiden Prothro from the Bowdon Red Devils. When we come back, we will talk with new Cedartown head football coach Tommy Atha, an exciting conversation with him. Stick around. This is the Carter Cadence. Welcome back into the Carter Cadence, now joined by new Cedartown head football coach Tommy Atha. Coach, thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Coach, I want to get into it with you. I'm really curious about how this opportunity kind of came to be. You know, everyone kind of thought you were a guy who had retired. Then you come back into coaching as an offensive coordinator at Calhoun last year, win a state title, and then this job at Cedartown kind of unexpectedly comes open. And tell me how this all transpired, not just the acquisition of the Cedartown job, but going from retired football coach back into it, and now you're a head coach again.
Yeah, you know, it's really kind of interesting. You know, I was at Darlington for a long time and was fortunate enough to be the head football coach there for 21 years. And, you know, I'd gotten to a point where I still loved what I was doing and enjoyed it, but felt like I was at a point in my life where I thought maybe I'll try something else and see if there's something else that I might want to do before I end this working career and so forth. So, you know, chose to step away for a year and got my real estate license, which is probably a miracle. I passed the real estate exam, but I did and was blessed to work for the Dempsey Auction Company in the land auction business for about 6 months, 8 months there, really a little bit longer, I guess, all the way through December. But, you know, it's funny. I enjoyed when I was out on the road doing the auction stuff, but I found the times where I was supposed to be doing the work, trying to find the sales, I was on football clinics and still watching outside zone videos and everything else. And so, you know, felt like I still had the drive. You know, even during that period of time when I was working in the auction business, I served as a community coach out at Model for a fall as well. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but kind of helped out that program. And my daughter, youngest, was at Calhoun, and I was blessed to help them as a community coach in the girls basketball program that year too, and saw Coach Stevenson. And, you know, Clay's been a friend of mine for a long time. And I just in passing one day said, you know, Coach, I may not be done. If anything ever opened up. And he kind of perked up and he said, are you serious? And I was like, well, maybe I am. Well, let's talk about this. And it just so happened that his offensive coordinator was going to take the head coaching job at Cherokee County. And this was in January. Well, this was actually in late December. He was going in January. And the only way that he could get out of his contract was if Clay could fill it with a person. And it just so happened that my certifications that I kept through the years fit that. And so I originally got hired at Calhoun to be the quarterback's coach. And I promise you, I would have been a lot smarter coaching Trace Hawkins now. I promise you that. But anyway, fast forward to that, you know, I came back on, went back in the classroom after like 18 years, for God's sakes. And a lot has changed in the classroom in the last 18 years, you know.
No kidding.
The chalk sticks go down and the smart board goes up. So big learning curve for me there. And I taught government econ for a semester, and then Barry Hall, who was our OL coach, ended up going to Sonoraville. And of course, my last 6 years at Darlington, I was the offensive line coach. So, you know, I had that background and it just seemed like the right fit. So Clay moved me to work with the offensive line and coordinate from there. And we went through that season and, you know, what a magical season that was last year. And, you know, I was very content at Calhoun, very happy. I mean, I had a great situation, still love those guys, loved working with them. But I'll be honest with you, I always knew, you know, there's certain jobs in the state, especially, let me take a step back. There are very few jobs in this neck of the woods at where I am in my career that I probably would have pursued as hard. But Cedartown's always been one of those situations where, it's such a tradition-rich football community. I grew up competing against Cedartown, so I certainly know all about that. And what they've done here, Coach Abrams did such an outstanding job. I mean, these guys, the program's in a good place, and they're coached up, and what Coach Worthington does in the weight room is tremendous. And so, Cedartown was always one of those situations which, if it ever came open for whatever reason, it was one of those I knew I would probably apply for. And great opportunity for me to kind of get back to the neck of the woods I grew up in, and it seemed like the right opportunity. So, I applied for it, and everything worked out, and lo and behold, here I am.
What excites you the most about this job?
Gosh, I think the kids, I think seeing how hard these kids work. I think seeing, their commitment to being a Bulldog and putting that red C on, and just the enthusiasm for football in this community. I think that really and truthfully is what excites me more than anything else.
I've heard some people, and I'll be honest, I maybe even use this phrase myself. You're a successful coach. Like your record was really good as a head coach. You're taking over a program that has been successful. Married that together, people are expecting you to be successful. What would you say to those people that are saying that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes.
Sure. What I would say to those people are, success. You certainly want to win every football game. You go in preparing and expecting to win every football game. You also understand when you step into a situation for the first time, you have to build it, to a certain extent, you kind of have to build it your way. And there's a process that goes along with that, and it doesn't come without bumps in the road. And there are going to be some bumps. And, the one thing I will tell you is that after 32 years of coaching football, my skin is extremely thick. So, I know there's going to be some things that are done that everybody's not going to agree with. And I know there's going to be some criticisms at certain times. And that's to be expected. That comes with the territory. But what I would say is to expect, the one thing I can guarantee is that these guys are going to be coached up. They're going to be fundamentally sound, because I've got a great group of coaches in place, and they're going to play extremely hard. And, the formula that has always worked for me is if you are fundamentally sound and you play harder than your opponent, then more times than not, you're going to come out on the positive side. So that's our approach to things.
So you've been on the job just a few months. What have you learned about your team with what they've got coming back? I know obviously they lost a few really, really good football players. Tay Harris comes to mind over at Georgia Tech now, but yeah, he's incredible. He was our large school player of the year for NWGA football last year. But it's always been a talent-rich area. You may have lost some guys in a pretty good senior class, but I'm sure there's still plenty of talent on the squad.
Yes, there certainly is. There's talent. We did lose. Even when you're already in charge of a program and you look and you see, for years and years, you would see a good class graduate and go, what are we going to do? How are we going to continue? And me coming into this situation, looking at those guys they had last year, that was a very, very talented class, senior class that's walking out the door. By the same token, this year's senior class is smaller, but there's some really committed kids to it. And there's talent in that class, and there's a lot of talent in the junior class. And so, what I would say about this football team is that notion in and of itself is team. For us to be successful this year, it's going to have to be, without question about the team concept and 11 guys playing in unison, on every side of the ball. And so, I think we're going to be a very methodical football team. I think we're going to be a very physical football team. And the biggest thing for us is going to be, play mistake-free football, execute at a high level, to go along with the talent that's coming.
After 21 years of being a head coach, did you learn anything from going back to be an assistant coach? I'm sure that was a transition of sorts for you of not maybe getting back to just the fundamentals. I've heard head coaches who go back to being assistant coaches. What did you learn after running a program for 21 years and now going back to being an assistant coach that maybe you could take with you as you go back into a leadership role over an entire program?
Yeah, for sure. Of course, every year is a learning experience. Every time you step out there, if you ever stop learning in this game, you're going to fall behind. But when you're a head coach for 21 years, you certainly have a certain way of doing things. You have a consistent yearly schedule. You have a consistent practice schedule. You have a consistent way that you meet on Sundays. You have a consistent way you do the off-season programming and so forth. So, having stepped away and then going out and working with, the guys over at Model and seeing how they did it. And then just, being blessed to be able to step in over at Calhoun, with what they've done there for years and years and years. And the way that they operate was a great learning curve and learning experience for me, because I was able, to kind of take some of the things that I had done and then learn some of the ways that they had done things from a structure and kind of marry those up. And I feel like I'm trying to bring a lot of that in here to Cedartown, because, there's a lot of things that I'll do here that I did at Darlington. There'll be a lot of things that we'll do here that I pulled away from what those guys are doing at Calhoun. And there's a lot of things that we will continue to do that have been done here at Cedartown, which is another successful program. So hopefully, we can marry all those things up and put this in place the way that we want to do it.
I think you have an interesting perspective on things because, this has been a huge topic of conversation in the state of Georgia right now as they're trying to, as the guys with the GHSA are trying to determine what they're going to do in the future with the classifications and what that's going to look like. Private schools always come up, where they're at, how they're going to be structured, where they're going to be placed. I am really curious, after coaching at a private school for so long, now being at a public school. You were at a public school the last 2 years coaching as an assistant, now as a head coach at a public school. What have you seen to be the biggest differences in coaching football at a public versus a private school?
If you want to know the honest to goodness truth, there's not a lot, right? Football done correctly is football. And it's about, A, it's about being fundamentally sound. B, it's about playing hard. C, it's about doing the right things, the character issues that go along with it. And at the end of the day, football is a physical sport. Football is a collision sport. Football, that doesn't change wherever you are, because if you're not going to do it wherever you are, you're not going to be successful. You know what I'm saying? If you can't block and tackle, I don't care if you're in a rec program, a private school, a Division I program, right? At the end of the day, those things are the difference at any level. And so, are there some nuances? Are there some differences? Yeah, there's probably some, but, by and large, the approach to the game, it doesn't change.
Yeah, I know. I feel like maybe at times the differences or the quote unquote advantages that private schools have are perhaps blown out of proportion. I know I think Coach Atha got the lights turned out on him there.
Hang on, I gotta get them back on. I'm in this. There we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's not the first time. That's not the first time that's actually happened before. That happened to Coach Cheatham from Fannin County too. So when I was interviewing him, but I do think at times maybe it can be a little blown out of proportion, the advantages, as I say, that some of the private schools have, especially in the Northwest Georgia area. It's not like we're talking about Atlanta money, it's not like we're talking about people in the suburbs of Atlanta. We're talking about, pretty rural areas. So I can see what you're saying there. As we kind of wrap up this interview, I love asking people kind of about some of their favorite some of their favorite coaching moments and stuff. And I'm really curious because when you were at Darlington, when you took the head coaching job, you took over for an absolute legend and Coach Jerry Sharp. The success, but the longevity that you would have taken over. I mean, because they always say you don't want to be the guy after the guy.
Right. That's right.
And you went out and actually were able to be the guy after the guy. It wasn't there was no kind of gap. Did you ever envision that if you step back 20, 25 years ago?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I was so young. I was too dumb to realize, what was going on. I don't know. No, I say that in jest. Jerry Sharp is the finest football coach I've ever known. And the things that he taught me are the things that after 32 years, I'm still doing. I can remember as a young coach, I was always I was all about schemes. I was all about, Coach, let's do this, let's do that, let's read this. And I can still see him look right at me and go, son, we're going to put hats on hats, and I mean, that was just his way of saying, we're going to stick to the basics. And then, obviously we did some things, some more things than that. But, I graduated from a public school. My wife was, a Lindale girl and never envisioned being at Darlington that long. And that's just where God intended for us to be. And I was able to raise a family and, certainly had no idea that my youngest would end up at Calhoun High School, while I was still coaching at Darlington. So, but getting back to your point, no, never really anticipated, just, was very, very fortunate. Let me put it that way. I was very, very fortunate and very blessed and have had some great, great coaches and had some really good players. And I think that allowed me to sustain, some success over time there.
Last question I want to ask you, because when I first reached out to you about doing this interview, you said you were going to a draft party. Tell me a little bit about how that went. One of the former players from our area, one of your former players, getting drafted in the NFL draft. I'm sure that was a special treat for you.
It was. I mean, it was really a surreal moment, to be honest with you. It was, they held it in downtown Athens at one of the places where his NIL deal is, and had a big lounge area set and all of that. And of course, Tate's dad and I coached together, Dean and I, and we're, very, very close friends. And so, my youngest daughter, who's actually going to be attending the University of Georgia next year, she and I went together, and we were actually the first two people there when Dean and Mary Stewart came in before Tate even got there. So, and then when Tate gets there, and he knows, he's going to get drafted. He knows he's going to get drafted, but there's still a little tension in the air, and then all of a sudden you see some of his friends and all these big guys coming in that are is bigger than him, which is kind of cool to see all those guys too. But, he's kind of got an idea of generally the time frame when he might go. And then all of a sudden, you see him, he gets a phone call and everybody like freezes and looks and then it just kind of gets really quiet and you see him. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. I'm better now. And then all of a sudden he looks up and goes Lions, and everybody just erupts, and goes crazy. So, yes, to see that come to fruition and, through all the hard work and the injuries that he's overcome to be drafted in the second round, it was a great night and a great moment.
Is Tate Ratledge the first player you've ever coached that's been drafted into the NFL?
Drafted, yes. I've had one that went as a free agent. I had a punter, Sean Powell, back in the mid-2000s that went to the Bills and played for a period of time. But Tate was the first drafted one, yes.
Got a pretty good running back from our area to block for now, too, with Jahmyr Gibbs. So,
well, what's funny? We actually played Dalton in a spring game when Jahmyr was going into his senior year up there, and I think Tate may have been a sophomore. I'm telling you, Jahmyr must have rushed for 800 yards that night. Tate and I laughed about it. I mean, and that's not an exaggeration, but Tate said, I'm glad I'll be blocking for him and not trying to catch him this time.
Yeah, he was unbelievable in high school, still is unbelievable now. So I'm sure he's excited to He's the guy. He's the guy. You don't got to do much. You just got to give him
That's
enough
right.
room to get that one cut in, and he's
That's
gone.
right.
So that makes it easy as a blocker.
Yeah.
So
and also, as an offensive lineman, the opportunity to go play for Dan Campbell. I mean,
oh yeah,
you talk about OL mentality now. That's a great situation.
Yeah, he's a fun coach. He's done what he's done in Detroit's been nothing short of spectacular, considering the history of that program. So that's a great staff to go play for as well. So that's exciting for Tate. Coach Tommy Atha from Cedartown, heading into his first season with the Bulldogs. Coach, thank you so much for joining us on the Carter Cadence.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great weekend.
Welcome back into the Carter Cadence. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with new Cedartown Bulldogs coach Tommy Atha, as he has immediately become one of the highest active, winningest coaches in our area coming out of retirement. He was a guy who had won well into the 100 games, close to 200 games in his career at Darlington over his time there, and now he jumps right back up that list. Frank Bowdon at the top of that list right now, but Tommy Atha right up there in the top 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember when I put the graphic out earlier this year, but he's got a great resume. He's got a great coaching lineage, did a lot of great things at Darlington, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see what he can do with this program. And he is inheriting a program that on paper looks pretty turnkey. They're a program that has made 4 or 5 playoff appearances in a row, has had a state final appearance, a region championship here in the last few years, as he's taken over a winning program, which is not something that is always the case when you are taking a new head coaching job. So going to be fun to see what he can do here in 2025 with Cedartown and moving forward after they lose a pretty decent senior class with some pretty top players, including Tay Harris, who's now at Georgia Tech. So let's get into this week's NWGA Throwback segment. So this game was a game that I heard about for years after it happened. I was in probably first grade, I want to say, when this game happened. Murray County came from behind against the Dalton Catamounts. This is honestly, at this point in time, I would probably say Murray County was Dalton's biggest rival. Dalton was certainly Murray County's biggest rival. North Murray High School didn't exist. Murray was the only school in the county. And Northwest has kind of been one of those top rivals for Dalton over the years. Calhoun has been kind of one of those teams up there as one of Dalton's most historic rivals over the years as well. But at this point in time, into the 90s, into the early 2000s, really even into the 80s too, as Bill Napier was there, Ronnie McClurg kind of coming in at Dalton. You had Bill McManus that was there after Bill Chappell. Those 3 coaches from Dalton. Bill Napier had a lot of success against Dalton in the late 90s. He won 3 games in 4 years. This was one of them, and it was a historic comeback for the Murray County Indians. Let's roll the tape on this. This is this week's NWGA Throwback segment. So I've added some radio commentary here too. So they throw it over the top here, catch it. That's Joel Statham, who would later on become the quarterback for Murray County, who went on to play at Maryland. So they score there and get the 2-point conversion. And as you'll see on the scoreboard, you don't see it there, but it makes the game 19-8 at this point. And I'm going to stop it here for a second as to kind of set the scene up a little more. So it's 19-8, under 3 minutes remaining when they do get on the board finally, after trailing 19-0 in the 4th quarter. Dalton gets the ball back here. I'm actually going to rewind it a little bit too. So they're back on defense here, and ensuing possession, Dalton gets the ball out just past midfield, and then they come in, force a fumble. And the same guy who just scored the touchdown, Charlie Van Hoos, picks it up, runs it all the way back for a touchdown. It's game on at this point, because now it's a 1-possession game, 19-14. Murray goes for 2 to make it a 3-point game. So all of a sudden, it's 19-16. Out of nowhere, Murray's right back in this game. Now they come out, they force the 3 and out. I left this part out of the edit here, and they get the ball back from Dalton. But Dalton punts it, pins Murray County deep in their own territory. I mean, they're all the way down, like on their own 1 yard line. So he's standing, quarterback's basically in his own end zone here to start this drive as they're going to try to come out and put together a game-winning drive and pull off this comeback. Another good pass into traffic there. They complete it. Clock's running. They don't have many timeouts left. Quarterback now scrambles out to pick up a first down, able to get out of bounds to stop the clock. And here is the play. Look at this play. Joel Statham coming in again, catches it in double coverage, takes it in for a touchdown, and you can hear the radio call.
Murray County has scored, and they lead it 22-19. What a game! What a comeback! This team was left for dead, and pick up a
Left for dead. That's the famous call I always remember hearing from this game. This team was left for dead. 23-19 with basically 23 seconds left in the game. They've come from behind in less than 3 minutes, put 23 points on the board in under 3 minutes. Unbelievable. I mean, just absolute stuff of legends there. And this is the final play of the game for Dalton here, is they're not able to do anything. They wind up getting pinned back in their own territory. Quarterback rolls out, winds up taking off running. And Murray wins it 23-19 over Dalton. Just an epic comeback. And one of the legends that was one of our top, that I put as one of our top 25 coaches from our area, Bill Napier. I want to say he was number 14, 15, 16, around that on our top 25 list that we put out back at the beginning of the year of the top 25 coaches in the last 25 years. Bill Napier, the coach at the time. Murray went on to be the region champion in 1999. Would not have accomplished that goal without this epic comeback over Dalton. They go on to win, advance and win a first-round playoff game. And this was kind of the peak of that 3-year run. This was kind of the peak of Murray County football from 99 through 2001. They won a playoff game all 3 seasons, made it to the quarterfinals in 2000, won 10 games 2 times over that course, over those 3 seasons, and just a lot of really fun football from Murray County. It's, if you talk to anybody over in Chatsworth, what North Murray is doing now is very reminiscent of what the Murray County Indians did back in the 1990s and early 2000s under Bill Napier. Sorry, Billy's his son. Billy was a quarterback at one point in that same era. I'm making a mistake there by calling him Billy. Bill Napier Sr. certainly was not known as Billy. Only his son has been. But that is this week's Throwback segment. Murray County's epic comeback over Dalton in 1999. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's show. Coming up on next week's show, we will be joined by Ringgold Tigers head football coach Austin Crisp, as he is going into his 3rd season as the head man for the Tigers after being on staff as an assistant for several years under now retired coach Robert Akins. He's put together a really good couple of years, including winning a first-round playoff game last year and making the playoffs his first 2 seasons as head coach. So we'll talk to him about what's the next step for this Ringgold program as they look to move forward, losing a pretty big senior class, going to have a new starting quarterback. All of those things are going to be on the table for Ringgold this year as they look to continue to improve as a program. So we'll talk to him next week. As always, please follow the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video. I would greatly appreciate that. It'll help get the show more exposure, and subscribe to the channel. You can follow on social media at Brooks Carter Media on Instagram and TikTok. Follow me on X at Brooks A. Carter, and follow NWGA Football on social media. Pretty much anywhere that you have social media, they're just NWGA Football. Just search it and you'll find them. So thanks for tuning in, guys. This has been the Carter Cadence. We'll catch up next week.